Hi there, good evening. Dr. Andrew Merrill here at Nightlight Chiropractic, and it's Wednesday. It's 8:15, and that means that it is time for another Wednesday Night Wellness Live. And we're here in downtown Orlando at Nightlight Chiropractic, and each week what we do is we bring you some of the most common questions that we're getting from our patients and put them into a context for you and a quick little snippet video here so that you can get the best of the information that we are talking to multiple patients every single day about without actually having to come in here and kind of pick our brains about some of this stuff. And I got a great show here for you this evening. I got two great topics that I'm going to kind of compress into one video here this evening, although they have absolutely nothing to do with one another, so bear with me as we go from one topic to the next. But they are both very important topics, I would argue, to some of you viewers out there. So stick around with me here today. I also have two quiz questions kind of sprinkled throughout some of the subject matter here today, because I know that a lot of my viewers out there like to have some quiz questions thrown at them so that they can answer and be involved, and I'm all about that. These videos are designed to be interactive. That's why I come on here live, right? I would much rather pre-record these and just kind of talk at you and not talk with you, but you would get less out of it and it would be less entertaining to watch me not make a fool out of myself on live Facebook videos. So anyways, here I am, and tonight we are talking about, first we are talking about masks. And we're talking about coughing and sneezing and some of the new research that came out very recently within the past 3 or 4 days about how far coronavirus, this COVID-19 SARS, can actually get, right? So I think the number that we use now is 6 feet, right? You've heard 6 feet. I think we all kind of practice this 6-foot rule. Where did we get this rule? How is this the rule? And is this really the right number, right? So the two new research pieces that came out, one of them looked at kind of the size of droplets as they're spread. One of the studies looked at coughing and sneezing and talking and exercise as those droplets are spread. And these things all matter to you, right? Because with things now being open, so my gym, you can go to my gym and work out in my gym. You just have to wear a mask, right? You have to have a mask on unless you're in a class very close to other people, and then you get to take your mask off. So I'm not really sure what that's supposed to be doing exactly, but you're probably out there, right? You're grocery shopping, you're going to the gym, you're going about as best life as you can, as normal as you can, wearing your mask. And I think it's really important to wear these masks, and we're going to talk about some of that here in addition. So these two new research studies that came out are basically looking at droplet size. So the reason that we are wearing these masks and the reason that you should be wearing this mask, hear me out, folks. I understand that we all have this idea that, wait, I can breathe right through this thing, or, oh, wait, my air gets out the side of my mouth. What good is this thing doing? So yes, you can breathe out of these things just fine, but I want you to try this for me. Try to spit through your mask. See how well that goes for you, okay? Try and spit directly through your mask and see exactly how big the droplets are that get out there. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to decrease the viral load. What's viral load, Dr. Merrill? Well, viral load is the amount of virus that actually gets into your system and then gets to kind of hijack your cells. So if you've watched any of our videos here, I did a piece a while back, probably now 6 or 8 weeks, that talks about how this virus gets in and kind of hijacks your cells. And if you don't really understand what we're talking about here tonight, I highly recommend that you go back and watch that video. It was a little kind of cartoony thing that I put together for my sons to help them to understand what we're talking about. But these masks are important because they reduce the viral load that comes out of your mouth into somebody else's mouth. So yeah, we understand that a lot of these respiratory droplets are filtered out through your oropharynx, through your nose, and they don't make it down into your lungs where they really start to do the damage that this virus is doing. And so when we're wearing these masks, it's to reduce the size of the droplets that are getting from one person to the next, so that even if you catch it, because as you're going to see here in a minute, it's very likely that we're all going to get some form of this before it's all said and done, because 6 feet is not the right number. But if you do get this and you have a small enough viral load, then it's less deadly, right? Your body can actually catch up quicker, and it can save your life by getting a smaller viral load. Kind of the same way a vaccine works, right? Not quite, but kind of the same way a vaccine works. All right, so quick quiz, right? So we have been told it's a 6-foot rule, right? Stay 6 feet away from people. That way you can decrease the amount of contamination. But how far do you think coughs and sneezes travel? How far can we actually project this virus? Is it 6 to 8 feet? Is it 18 to 25 feet, or is it 30 to 40 feet? Somebody else has already, didn't even need the choices. Somebody's already guessing that's about 12 feet. So is it 6 to 8 feet, 18 to 25 feet, or 30 to 40 feet? What do you folks think? There's only a couple people watching here right now live, but it's interesting, right? So the lowest number there is 6 to 8 feet. That would, I guess, technically be that 6 foot rule. But if you're actually looking at the research, and this new research that just came out, it's going to tell you that in perfectly static conditions, so you're sitting in your room or your house or wherever, and there's no crosswinds, there's no air conditioning, nothing, it's just static, a cough and a sneeze are going to travel from 18 to 25 feet. 18 to 25 feet. Right? How much more is that than 6? It's 3 to 4 times more than 6. You would need to be standing 25 feet away to not get hit with some of that viral sneeze as it's projected across the room. So guess what stops some of that from actually making it to you? A mask. Oh my God. It's so weird that we're recommending these things because it would stop a sneeze or a cough from going 18 to 25 feet and then hitting somebody across the room in their face. So I don't know if the number 6 should be a number that we hang on to, but I do understand that if we can limit how far coughs and sneezes are going, we're going to do some good and maybe potentially save some people's lives. Yes, I understand some of those droplets hang in the air. Yes, you can walk into a room 10 minutes later, literally 10 minutes later, and you could potentially inhale some of these leftover particles hanging in the air, but you're going to get a much smaller viral load, right? All right, so let's talk about something else because this was news to me. The contagiousness of speech droplets. Okay, so we know that if somebody's coughing and sneezing, you're like, back up. I don't want you anywhere near me. You are obviously sick, or it's seasonal allergies, but even still, I don't want you sneezing in my face. Got it? That sounds fair. But do you realize that speech droplets, and this is the new research, this is actually a quote from the new research, speech droplets generated by asymptomatic carriers of severe SARS are increasingly considered to be the most likely mode of disease transmission. So we're not talking about people coughing and sneezing. We're talking about people who look perfectly healthy, seem perfectly healthy, are talking with you, maybe even 6 feet apart, but some of that speech is generating droplets big enough for it to end up contaminating you, right? And if you're watching this video, I get pretty animated. You could probably see some of some spit droplets coming out of my mouth as I'm talking to this camera here right now. Understand that this new research looked at stagnant air, again, closed room, no crosswind. Droplets took 8 to 14 minutes to disappear coming from normal speech. They called it loud speech. I'm not even sure where the line is drawn. This is probably considered loud speech, but some of those droplets hung in the air for 8 to 14 minutes. So that's why I'm saying that if we're all going to get this, you want the least amount of viral load when you actually do end up getting this. So contagiousness of speech is actually huge. If you're going to be near somebody, again, try one of these things or one of these things or one of these things. It doesn't much matter because, like I said, try spitting through any of these actually, right? Like the material doesn't matter as much as you think it does. I don't care if it is like a HEPA filter and the best grade, whatever. All of these things are going to protect some of the spittle and some of the droplets from coming at you. So there was another thing that was talked about, and this is instead of being in like a closed room, right? So you have your closed room and you're talking to somebody, and yeah, coughs and sneezes travel far, and yeah, speech travels however far. But what about when we're actually outside exercising? Right? So a lot of people during all of this were allowed to go exercise, at least here in Orange County. And what they were doing, at least a lot of them, were walking around lakes, right? They were out there exercising, either walking or running. We were allowed to do it to get out and have our exercise. Well, how far do some of those changes in people moving, does that change the number of how far this SARS virus is floating through the air? And it turned out it did. So we're going to go into side quiz number 2. And again, not that many folks watching here yet, but side quiz number 2. Ready? Without any crosswind, a person running 9 miles per hour, which actually is really fast. I'm curious to figure out. I would love to see who they found to run 9 miles per hour again and again and again, back and forth. Anyways, 9 miles per hour, person running leaves a trail of virus. How long? Is it 16 feet, 32 feet, or 64 feet? What do you think? 16 feet, 32 feet, or 64 feet. Somebody's running 9 miles an hour and they go right past you. You move right back behind them, and then you are walking through a trail of 32 feet of virus being trailed along behind them. 32 feet. If somebody ran past you and then you were behind them in their slipstream, 32 feet is what you'd have to pass through to get through all that virus. That's insane to me, right? That's not 6 feet. That's not even close to 6 feet. Somebody runs by you and you think that that virus is well gone, and it turns out that it's 32 feet of virus following that person. So what the researchers said was, if you're going to be following behind somebody, move off outside of where they're running so that any virus that is moving because of their heavy breathing is not something that you are traveling behind them to go through. Right? Or, the other thing that you might be able to do is use a mask. Just use a mask. All right. So let's see. That was all I had to talk about as far as that new research, but I think it's really important new research, and it definitely makes a point about masks being important. It also kind of makes a point that 6 feet isn't nearly the number that we should be talking about, but I really don't want to go back into hibernation and quarantine, so if we could do our best to limit exposure by using our masks, that would be fantastic for me and for you and for the economy and for the world probably. All right, so the rest of tonight, and real quick, I only want to give this about 2 minutes of my time, but I've been having a lot of patients coming in with hip pain. And it's weird because everyone seems to think that when you turn 35 or 40, I hit that magic number. When you turn 35 or 40, what happens is if you get hip pain, you automatically have arthritis, right? You have osteoarthritis if you have hip pain. It must be a fact. That it could be the only thing that it is. No reason to diagnose it. Just go get your total hip replacement and call it a day. And that's not the case, right? So osteoarthritis is not the most common diagnosis that we're seeing in a lot of our patients here. There was actually a Framingham osteoarthritis study, big study. Anything with Framingham behind it usually has a lot of participants. And the authors found that osteoarthritis found on hip x-ray only happened in about 1 in 6 patients with hip pain as older patients. And I don't know what the numbers were exactly on older patients, but it was definitely older than 35 to 40. So only 1 in 6 people who had hip pain actually had osteoarthritis. So what are our other choices, right? I feel like it's just a problem where people don't even know what the other things that could affect the hip are. And I wanted to talk about 2 of them real quick. So I don't have an articulated hip joint, unfortunately. All I have is the pelvis here at the bottom where the hip would go. The ball fits right into the socket here. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the full anatomy to show you. But what happens is that ball fits right into that socket, and then you have this labrum that covers it and holds the ball in the socket to allow your hip to move and not come out of place. So the 2 most common diagnoses that we see here, one is bursitis, right? You end up with these fluid-filled capsules that sit just outside the outer part of the hip, and those fluid-filled capsules prevent the hip from snapping over bone, and they get inflamed, typically because of bad motion. Well, there's a few other things. Let's go real quick. So the couple of things that we see most frequently that cause bursitis: bad hip motion with walking or running much more. People try to have that foot over foot gait like they were running on a tightrope, and it's not what your hips are meant to do. Don't do that, folks. It is going to end up causing bursitis, and you're going to think it's osteoarthritis. The other thing is poor shoes, right? I'm not sure what's going on out there, but we see a lot of patients who don't realize that your feet are going to affect your knees and your hips. If you're wearing bad shoes, it's going to end up catching up to you. And then no stretching or bad stretching of all the associated musculature. I don't know if we've done that in a previous video, but it's not for this video. I will eventually get you that, but you should be stretching your hips, suffice to say. The other thing that we really commonly see here is hip synovitis. And I know I'm starting to sound like I'm speaking Latin, bursitis, synovitis, but your synovium is the internal covering of the joint space here. So it lines the joint space, and it's designed to create that slick area so that your joint can move without much friction. So it's really important. Well, the other thing that happens, unfortunately, is that synovium spins off inflammation really fast, right? It's where a lot of the inflammation inside of a joint comes from. And so when there's any inflammation to the hip from anything, from direct trauma like falling, from bad hip motion, from running too much, from not stretching, whatever it is, that synovitis, that synovium is going to pour inflammation into the area, and then it hurts because that whole area is inflamed. Right? And so if you put heat on that, you're going to end up making things worse. There's some research to say that if you put heat on bursitis, it can actually help to reduce it. I'm always a sucker for ice. If you've ever been to see me as a patient, you know that I always err to ice because it doesn't make anything worse. You might try heat if you end up having hip pain on the side there. So anyways, that's all I have here for hip pain. If you have hip pain and you're older, or maybe not even older, probably not osteoarthritis. It's important to get it diagnosed. We can help you to diagnose it. Your medical doctor can help you to diagnose it, but don't just think that it's osteoarthritis and kind of go about your day. Anyways, that's all I have for this evening. I did want to give a quick mention that next week I'm going to have a special guest here with me, so it should be a fantastic show. We have a lot of important topics to talk about. It's going to be great. That's all I have for this evening. Again, have a wonderful rest of your week. Be healthy, and good night.